One tiny mistake could end your life, or your reputation. Today, 33 insane etiquette rules you wouldn't survive back then. From Versailles dressing rituals to Imperial China's red ink taboo, it's wild. You'll hear how a fork, a bow, or a kiss backfired. Stay for number 33, because the wedding bedroom crowd is insane. Versailles court required waiting hours just to dress. At Versailles, your morning could vanish before you left bed. Under Louis XIV, the royal levee was a daily spectacle. Nobles lined corridors, hoping for a turn holding lace. Rank decided who handed the shirt, the stockings, the sword. If you arrived late, someone else stole your precious moment. A duke might wait hours just to pass a sleeve. Whispered insults flew while mirrors reflected powdered wigs and politics. One wrong glance could drop you from favors to exile. Getting dressed was not private, it was survival theater. 2. Never turn your back on the king at court. At court, turning around could look like treason today. In France, etiquette demanded you retreat facing the monarch. Courtiers backed away from Louis XIV like crabs on marble. The rule protected royal mystique and watched every sword hand. Bumping a chair could trigger laughter, then a cold silence. Some practiced in galleries, counting steps, never blinking too long. Meanwhile, rivals measured your clumsiness, ready to report it. The king's guards noticed everything, even where your eyes landed. So you bowed, slid backward, and prayed your heels behaved. 3. Elizabethan guests had to wash hands before each course. In Elizabethan England, dirty hands could ruin your social climb. At great houses, servants brought basins between every course. Queen Elizabeth I's feasts mixed fingers, knives, and shared trenchers. A ewer poured scented water while you held your rings up. Skip the rinse, and someone might whisper you were plague-minded. Spices were expensive, so cleanliness signaled money and control. Guests watched each other's nails like judges at a trial. Even the napkins were status symbols, folded, stitched, and guarded. The meal was a performance, and your hands starred. 4. Victorian morning etiquette policed how long you could smile. In Victorian Britain, grief had a timetable and a wardrobe. After Prince Albert died in 1861, Queen Victoria modeled decades-long mourning. Widows wore dull black crepe, then slowly shifted to gray. You were judged for laughter, dancing, or bright ribbons at church. Some manuals listed months of deep mourning and second mourning. Neighbors tracked your timeline, like a calendar pinned to skin. A widow at a concert could trigger gossip faster than music. But too much sorrow seemed theatrical, so you walked a tightrope. Mourning wasn't private, it was public etiquette, with teeth. 5. No touching the royal person even to save them. Touch the monarch wrong, and you could end your career. In many European courts, physical contact signaled power and danger. Guards and ushers formed human walls around kings and queens. A sudden grab looked like an assassination attempt, even if helpful. At Versailles, approaching Louis XIV uninvited broke the entire choreography. In London, protocol later shaped how subjects approached the sovereign. So, if the royal stumbled, courtiers hesitated, waiting for permission. That pause could be terrifying, like watching glass fall in slow motion. 6. Bowing order in Imperial Japan could decide your fate. In feudal Japan, a bow could keep you alive. During the Tokugawa era, rank was visible in every movement. At Edo Castle, the shogun's corridors enforced strict posture rules. Visitors learned where to kneel, when to speak, when to vanish. A too confident gaze could invite a duel you never wanted. Yet overdoing humility looked fake, like begging for a promotion. So everyone bowed like choreography because status was literally measured. 7. Ancient Rome expected you to recline while eating. In Rome, sitting upright at dinner could mark you uncultured. Wealthy Romans hosted banquets in a triclinium with 3 couches. Julius Caesar's era loved spectacle, from peacocks to poetry recitals. Your seat position showed rank, and hosts watched it closely. Eat too eagerly, and you looked like a starving soldier. Some dinners ran for hours, with games and political whispers. Reclining also hid discomfort, so even indigestion became polite. The couch was a stage, and everyone played Roman. 8. Spitting in a spittoon was mandatory gentleman behavior. In 19th century America, spit on the floor and lose respect. Tobacco chewing was common, so saloons kept brass spittoons everywhere. Gentlemen aimed carefully, because missing made you look sloppy. Barbershops, hotels, and even courtrooms sometimes had them lined up. Etiquette books warned against loud hawking sounds before spitting. Some places fined men for spitting, especially during tuberculosis scares. People carried personal spittoons, like tiny trophies of nicotine. Then cigarette culture rose, and spittoons suddenly seemed disgusting. What was polite became gross overnight, like fashions do. 9. Gloves stayed on during greetings in high society. In Europe's elite circles, bare hands could signal low status. Victorian and Edwardian guests wore gloves to dinners, dances, and calls. A handshake without gloves could feel intimate, even improper. Women used kid leather gloves that tore if you moved wrong. Men removed hats, not gloves, when greeting in drawing rooms. At a London ball, sweat stains were a secret social disaster. So people carried extra pairs, like spare masks, for manners. One accidental glove slip could start rumors about your hygiene. The glove wasn't warmth, it was a boundary you wore. 10. Victorian women could not visit without a chaperone. In Victorian Britain, visiting alone could wreck a woman's reputation. Middle-class rules said an unmarried woman needed a chaperone. That might be an older aunt, a mother, or a paid companion. In London, gossip traveled faster than carriages on wet streets. A man answering the door alone could turn a call into scandal. Young couples used drawing rooms and open doors as safeguards. Yet romance still happened through letters, gardens, and crowded dances. Sometimes chaperones winked because families wanted good matches. The chaperone wasn't a person, it was a moving rulebook. 11. Do not show ankles in public Victorian streets. In Victorian cities, a flash of ankle could invite instant judgment. London fashion prized modesty, especially for respectable middle-class women. Long skirts, petticoats, and boots kept skin hidden on purpose. Busy streets meant horse manure, so lifting hems looked practical. But practical could be misread as flirtatious, and that was dangerous. Illustrations mocked women who stepped too high onto omnibuses. Some men treated ankles like secret signals, which fueled paranoia. So women mastered tiny steps even while crossing muddy roads. It was like playing chess with your hemline every day. 12. French salon etiquette forbade mentioning money or work. In Paris salons, talk of money could get you frozen out. During the Enlightenment, hosts like Madame Geoffrin curated conversation carefully. Guests debated art, philosophy, and politics, but avoided business details. Mentioning your job sounded provincial, like bringing mud into silk rooms. Even rich financiers used wit, not numbers, to prove worth. Writers like Voltaire thrived on clever turns, not invoices. A guest who bragged about profits might never receive another invitation. But everyone still tracked status through clothes, carriages, and favors. So silence about work was itself a luxury performance. 13. Tea etiquette said never pour your own cup. At an English tea table, self-pouring could scream bad breeding. In the 19th century, the hostess controlled the teapot like a crown, She poured for guests, judging strength, milk, and sugar requests. Pouring yourself implied impatience, as if servants were too slow. Afternoon tea also displayed china, especially Wedgwood and delicate silver. One spill on a lace cuff could haunt you all season. Conversation stayed light, while the teapot quietly policed hierarchy. Even the order of cups mattered, like a slow-moving cue. So you waited, smiled, and let someone else control your sip. 14. Dining forks were rude and suspicious in medieval Europe. In medieval Europe, using a fork could get you mocked. Knives and fingers ruled, especially at feasts in England and France. When forks arrived from Byzantium and Italy, some called them sinful. A famous scandal followed a Byzantine princess in Venice centuries earlier. Critics joked God gave fingers, so metal prongs showed vanity. In church circles, forks were linked to luxury and suspicious foreign manners. But elites liked cleaner hands, so forks kept returning anyway. By the Renaissance, Italy embraced forks, and France followed later. So a tiny utensil started as controversy before becoming normal. 15. Bread was your plate and you had to eat it. At medieval banquets, your plate was edible and expected to vanish. Hosts served food on thick bread slabs called trenchers. In England and France, sauces soaked in, turning bread into gravy sponges. After courses, you either ate the trencher or donated it. Some households gave used trenchers to the poor outside the hall. So etiquette included gratitude, because your plate might feed someone else. Guests tried not to tear too early, keeping the surface intact. A soggy collapse could splash a lord's sleeves, causing instant embarrassment. Bread wasn't background. It was the tableware with consequences. 16. Loud slurping was proper compliment in old Japan. In Japan, quiet eating could sound like you hated the food. For soba and ramen, slurping signals enjoyment and appreciation. In Edo period noodle stalls, steam rose, and customers ate fast. The slurp also cools noodles, mixing air so you avoid burns. Foreign visitors sometimes froze, thinking it was rude table noise. But locals heard silence as criticism, like a closed door. Some shops even judge regulars by volume half-jokingly too. So the noodle bowl became a tiny etiquette trap for tourists. Sometimes manners are the opposite of what you expect. 17. You had to stand when a noble entered any room. Fail to rise, and you could be labeled disrespectful instantly. In European courts, rank dictated bodies like invisible puppet strings. When a duke entered, everyone stood, even mid-sentence too. At Versailles, officials watched because posture signaled loyalty. Sit first, and you looked equal, which was a serious claim. In England, the king's presence could keep people standing for hours. Even in manor houses, landlords expected the same reflex from tenants. Some guests time coughs to sit briefly, then pop up again. Respect was measured in sore legs, not warm feelings. 18. Never sit until the highest-ranking person sat first. Sit too soon, and you could start a social war. At formal dinners, the host or highest rank set the tempo. In Britain, that might be a peer, a general, or a bishop. Everyone hovered, pretending casual, while chairs waited like traps. A servant could pull your chair, but you still needed the signal. The highest-ranking guest sometimes delayed, enjoying the power quietly. Meanwhile, conversation stalled, because nobody wanted to choose standing. When the leader finally sat, the whole room dropped at once. It's like a domino game, except the dominoes are people. 19. Handwritten letters required, the right fold and seal. A badly folded letter could signal insult before anyone read it. In early modern Europe, letters were folded into their own envelopes. The fold patterns and wax seals helped prove privacy and identity. In Tudor England, spies hunted broken seals in palace corridors. Mary Queen of Scots learned how dangerous intercepted letters could be. People pressed family crests into hot wax, then stamped quickly. Wrong color wax or sloppy imprint could look amateur or suspicious. Couriers rode through mud, so folds also protected ink from smears. Your message traveled as a tiny engineered object, not paper. 20. Hats off indoors or you insulted the entire household. Walk indoors with your hat on and you looked aggressive. In Britain and America, removing hats showed respect and harmless intent. A gentleman kept gloves, but doffed his hat in parlors. Churches enforced it fiercely because headwear suggested you answer to nobody. In the Old West, a hat stayed on only if trouble followed. Hosts judged you at the doorway before any introductions happened. Keeping it on could hide your face, which raised suspicion. So men developed a whole choreography of tipping, sweeping, and smiling. The hat was a flag, and indoors you lowered it. 21. Victorian etiquette said ladies must never perspire. In Victorian culture, visible sweat could brand you as unrefined. Beauty ideals demanded women appear cool, delicate, and almost weightless. London summers still baked drawing rooms, crowded with gas lamps. Women used fans, powders, and smelling salts to keep composure. A flushed face was blamed on nerves, not heat or exertion. Corsets trapped bodies, making breath shallow during long dinners. Servants discreetly opened windows, then closed them to avoid drafts. Meanwhile, men could sweat freely, so the rule was unequal. It was manners pretending biology could be edited with lace. 22. Bathing too often was considered dangerous and improper. In parts of Europe, frequent bathing could make you seem reckless. By the 18th and 19th centuries, some doctors feared warm baths. They worried pores opened, letting sickness enter, especially in winter. So people relied on linen changes, perfumes, and sponge wiping. In Paris and London, public bathhouses faded, replaced by private caution. Aristocrats might wash hands and face, but avoid full immersion. Then germ theory grew, and suddenly soap looked like modern science. Old advice flipped, turning yesterday's prudence into today's dirtiness. So cleanliness changed, not because morals shifted, but knowledge did. 23. Corset lacing rules controlled how you could sit. A tight corset could turn sitting into a slow negotiation. In Victorian Britain and France, corsets shaped posture and silhouette. Etiquette demanded you perch, not sprawl, on chairs and settees. Women learned the sideways sit, keeping skirts arranged like architecture. Stand too quickly, and you risked fainting in a crowded parlor. Some women loosened laces privately, then tightened them before visitors. Fashion magazines praised tiny waists, even when ribs protested silently. The corset wasn't just clothing, it choreographed your whole day. 24. Victorian children were seen and not heard ever. In many Victorian homes, a noisy child could be punished fast. Middle-class parents prized obedience, quiet voices, and controlled posture. Children ate separately, or silently, while adults discussed politics and money. In England, nurseries kept kids upstairs, away from guests below. A child entering the drawing room uninvited was a social shock. Governesses enforced rules, teaching manners like drills and recitations. Yet novels show kids listening at doors, learning secrets anyway. So silence didn't erase childhood, it just pushed it into shadows. Manners became training wheels for future adults, sometimes painfully tight. 25. Separate staircases for servants so you never saw them. In grand houses, you could live among staff and never meet. British country estates built back stairs for servants and deliveries. The goal was invisibility, keeping the illusion of effortless luxury. In London townhouses, servants used basement corridors, like underground streets. A maid carrying coal past guests could embarrass the entire household. So bells and speaking tubes summoned help without human contact. Meanwhile, servants learned silent footsteps, quick exits, and downcast eyes. The separation created two worlds, one above, one below. Etiquette hid labor, like stagehands working behind a curtain. 26. Not using the correct title could start a feud. One wrong honorific could turn dinner into a lifelong enemy. In Britain, titles like Lord, Sir, and Lady carried legal weight. In Germany and Austria, noble styles could be even more complex. Call a baron a count, and you looked ignorant or mocking. At court, rivals waited for slips, then spread them as weapons. In America's Gilded Age, new money copied titles to sound old. That made real aristocrats defensive, sharpening every introduction. So people memorized genealogies like sports stats just to survive. A name wasn't enough. The label decided your place. 27. Must offer snuff or you looked hostile. Refuse snuff politely, and someone might still think you're insulting. In 18th century Europe, snuff boxes were like social passports. French and British elites carried scented tobacco powders in ornate boxes. Offering a pinch was a greeting, almost like sharing a handshake. Rejecting it too strongly suggested you distrusted the giver. Some boxes held portraits or jewels, making the offer a mini-show. At Versailles and London clubs, the ritual happened between every conversation. Of course, constant sneezing followed, which people treated as charming. So manners demanded sharing something that made everyone sniffle. 28. Dining rules required keeping both feet on the floor. Put a foot up and you could be tagged as crude. Formal dining in Britain and America policed posture like a drill. Both feet on the floor signaled control, not lounging comfort. Crossed ankles were safer, but crossed knees looked too relaxed. Victorian manuals warned against swinging legs, fidgeting, or tapping shoes. Hosts watched under the table, because that's where real habits hide. A restless foot could knock glassware, making servants rush in panic. So guests trained stillness, like statues pretending to eat soup. The rule sounds tiny, but it controlled bodies for hours. 29. Speaking first to a superior was a serious offense. Speak out of turn, and you could be labeled insolent. In many courts and militaries, superiors expected silence until addressed. In Prussia, officers trained subordinates to wait, then answer crisply. At royal dinners, you might sit near a prince and say nothing. Talking first implied equality, which threatened hierarchy like a cracked column. So, people mastered small smiles, nods, and carefully timed laughter. If a superior tested you with a question, your tone mattered. Answer too long, and you sounded like a lecturer, not a servant. Silence became a language, and everyone pretended it was natural. 30. Left-hand eating was taboo across many courts. Use the left hand at table, and you could discuss people. In many cultures, the left hand was considered unclean. Courts and households reinforced it during meals, greetings, and gifting. Etiquette protected hygiene because toilets and water systems were limited. So servants placed bowls to wash, and elders watched your hands. Foreign visitors sometimes offended hosts without realizing, then faced icy stares. Some rulers turned it into a loyalty test, which feels unfair. Even today, people switch hands instinctively when sharing food. Back then, a hand choice could shape your entire welcome. 31. Royal weddings included a public bedding ceremony. A royal wedding could end with strangers watching you go to bed. In medieval and early modern Europe, bedding proved the marriage was real. In France, crowds escorted the couple to the bedchamber with torches. Louis XVI and Marie Antoinette faced that ritual in 1770. Courtiers watched prayers, removed shoes, then withdrew once curtains closed. The whole thing was theater, because dynasties depended on heirs. If rumors claimed the marriage wasn't consummated, politics turned vicious. So a private act became public proof, like stamping a document. Imagine honeymoon nerves plus an audience, and you get royal etiquette. 32. Public kissing was scandal even between married couples. In many past cities, a kiss could spark whispers for weeks. Victorian Britain prized restraint, even for husbands and wives in public. On promenades and in parks, affection stayed coded, not obvious. A public kiss suggested low morals, or theatrical behavior from actors. In Paris, private passion existed, but the street still demanded decorum. Couples used small gestures, like brief touches through gloves. Even honeymooners learned to behave, because servants and neighbors watched. The twist is that privacy, not love, was the real status symbol. So romance survived, just hidden behind curtains and polite smiles. 33. Men were expected to bow but never bend too low. Bow too deep, and you could look weak instead of respectful. In European courts, men bowed to nobles but avoided excessive humility. A shallow bow insulted, yet a deep bend looked like begging. In France and England, swords and spurs made balance part of etiquette. If your hat fell or your knee touched ground, people noticed. Some men practiced in mirrors, trying to look confident and graceful. Rivals read your bow like a resume, scanning for weakness. Military officers preferred crisp nods, while courtiers preferred smooth arcs. So respect became geometry, measured in angles, not sincerity.